Okay, hello and welcome to our roundtable talk on intersectionality and activism. My name is Violet and this is our lovely panel. I'm going to ask you guys by introducing yourselves, your name, your pronouns, your involvement in activism in the university and how you're involved in Reclaim the Night. Okay.
You guys want to start?
Yeah.
I guess I'll start. Hi, everyone. My name's Esther. My pronouns are she, her, and I am this year's Black Association Chair, and I'm also the co-founder / president of a society called Black Girl Space. And how I'm involved in Reclaim the Night is I'm part of the focus group that we have. So, yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Rhythm and I am the LGBTQ Association Chair for the Student Union. I'm also the president of the Model United Nations Society, which is a platform where we talk about issues that are relevant to the world. And I'm involved with Reclaim the Night as a part of the focus group again, yeah?
Hi, so my name is Emily. My pronouns are she, her. I have been co-chairing the Feminist Collective. It's my second year doing that. What do we talk about liberation and we try to raise funds for everything around feminism, basically. And as for my involvement in Reclaim, it's the focus group, really, yeah. So we've been consulting, yeah, to help it make it more inclusive, more accessible.
Hi, I'm Sahini. My pronouns are she, her, and I am co-chair of Resist Rape Culture, so it is basically what we say we do. So yeah, we're very relevant to Reclaim the Night, and I'm also part of this focus group, and I'm also co-founder and co-chair of Butterfly Effect, where we work on liberation and inclusivity in the sense of like trying to change the curriculum and making it more representative.
Yeah. I'm going to start off with our first question. So this year's theme for Reclaim the Night is Call It By Its Name. What does this theme mean to you? And especially to those in marginalised groups.
Go ahead.
All right. I think when we first discussed the theme of Reclaim the Night, and that it would be calling it by its name, I think that speaks to lots of minority communities, because when you are a minority community in a society, in a world, you grow up with a sense of shame, you grow up with a sense of powerlessness. And when you call sexual assault, rape, and these heinous crimes by its name, I think it renders you with a sense of power, it renders you with a sense of understanding that you are not the person who is responsible, and that it's the perpetrators who should feel the shame. So I think at the end of the day, what it does, it destigmatizes the idea of being a victim and allows us to think of ourselves as survivors, as powerful forces.
I think you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I think just going on from what you've said, it's just all about being explicit. It's all about like literally what it's saying, calling it by its name. And I guess that just means that, I mean, I can only speak for the communities that I'm part of, but in the Black community and the African community, like these things are not necessarily spoken about, and women do feel silenced and powerless. And I guess if you just call it by its name, it kind of removes the power from the perpetrators and from these things, and we can move on and get to the healing process. So yeah.
Thank you. So our next question is, in previous marches of Reclaim the Night, it has been split into blocks. So for example, women's block, mixed block, people of colour. This issue has been raised and caused controversy on social media. So I just want to ask your opinions about blocks and how you feel about them being removed from the march this year.
Honestly, I think it's a good thing that they were removed this year, because I think last year just caused so much controversy, but also just confusion, because I don't think people knew which one to go to, because I think they were called Women Plus, Liberation and Mixed.
And that's their like new name, but the actual names were supposed to be Women, Intersectional, I think, and Other, which was even more confusing. Like if you're a woman but you're like Black, where do you go? And I think an incident happen, right? Then again, I don't think that blocks are inherently bad. Like they can be good, just the way that it was done last year was not. But I get the idea of like wanting to be safe when you march. Like, it's Reclaim the Night, there's probably going to be like a lot of women and gender minorities, and if it's like cis men or just unsafe people, like self-segregation can sometimes be protection. So there's that. But I think cancelling them is also like
I think
a
it was
viable option.
a
Yeah.
pretty good idea for this year because of what happened last
Yeah.
year and because of the confusion around it. And like you said, it got changed, like the names got changed at the last minute because it was like women instead of women plus, and that was their way of being like inclusive
Yeah.
to like non-binary genders, and I thought that was like the worst way to do it probably. But like a lot of people were like, I don't know what I am, like I don't know which one to go to, so I'll go to mixed because that seems like one for everyone, I think. So yeah, I think most people ended up in the mixed block, but again, I think it just caused confusion more than anything else. And I think what's good this year is like, because we don't have blocks, but it doesn't mean you can't go in a big group. So like,
Yeah.
for example, if you're like part of Resist Rape Culture or FemSoc, you know, you can just go with your society or your sports team or whoever, and you can still go in like big groups of people, but you don't necessarily have to do that, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing else. Yeah.
So LGBT plus people have higher rates of gender-based violence and victimization. For example, 50% of transgender people are more likely to experience sexual violence in their lifetimes. How do you feel that we can include more LGBT plus people in conversations around violence?
I think I will go back to my first response, which was about talking about how there is an immense sense of shame that comes with being a victim of sexual assault and rape, because we live in a society, in a culture that doesn't really allow us to voice our pain and our grief, because it is thought that we, as victims, are responsible for what is happening to us. And above that, there's the simultaneity of the shame which comes with being LGBT in certain conservative cultures and societies. And I think what is really important is that we stand to remind these communities that it's not them who should be feeling the shame, it's the perpetrators, it's the people who uphold and perpetuate a system that blames and questions victims rather than projecting blame on those who are causing this violence. So it's very important from my personal point of view to begin an open and inclusive discourse and to reach out to people who come from these minority communities where their sexuality is looked down upon, where certain sexual minorities are excluded, alienated, and marginalized. It's very important to include them in the discussion and the discourse and to make them feel as if they also have a power, they have a sense of autonomy, and they can exercise their rights when they feel violated. So I feel that's incredibly important and instrumental to us empowering LGBTIQ community itself, yeah.
I have to agree with like everything you've just said, but also the way we can do it, like I'd say in this university in Manchester, and especially as part of this like Reclaim the Night campaign, is just raising awareness of support services specifically for LGBT individuals. So there's like Gallup, who I know we have donated to. There's a lot of other ones that if you look on the Resist Rape Culture like Instagram, you'll find them, and if you do any research or even just reach out to people, I know you'll be able to find them. So that is one of the major things I think we can do, is increase awareness of support services for LGBT individuals, as well as just making sure that you know, they know they're supported for, because I don't think anyone ever talks about individuals who may be part of minorities, which is like, you know, that's the reason we're here today, is to talk about it. But yeah, I do definitely agree.
And if I could just add to that, because I just remembered a quote from one of my favorite authors, Arundhati Rai, and she talked about how in this world there's no such thing as the voiceless. There's only the preferably unheard and the forcibly silenced. It was in one of those lines. I'm not too sure of what the quote went like, but this was the quote. And I think it resonates with the community, because oftentimes they are voicing their pain, they're vocalizing their suffering, but there's no one listening to them. There's a system of oppression, there's a system of alienation, and I think that needs to change, that needs to shift. And I think that's exactly what we're doing at Reclaim the Night. That's exactly what the student union's doing, giving them a platform to voice their trauma and their experiences, and a way to reconcile with a healing process, a restorative process. Yeah.
Thank you. So historically, there have been incidences wherein people who identify as transgender and sex workers have been excluded in the march. Finn McKay, who wrote a book on Reclaim the Night, says this forms the fault lines in modern feminism. There are also divisions within the LGBT community, such as TERFs, who are trans exclusionary radical feminists. And within the LGBT community, there are groups such as LGB Alliance, which purposely exclude transgender people. What are your thoughts on these conflicts, and how can we build a community to help fight for intersectional liberation together?
Okay, so first of all, TERFs are horrible people. They're not feminists. If you're a TERF, like the radical and the feminists don't belong in this acronym, because you're not a feminist. If it's not intersectional, it's not liberation. So, and same for SWERFs. So sex worker exclusionary radical feminists, same thing. They're not feminists. They don't aim for liberation. They just want a very clean version of femininity, and they want it to be liberated. So I guess white women, cis white women, and that's not how it's supposed to work. Like, if you want to liberate women, you liberate them all, and same for gender minorities, and same for gay people. So yeah, that's initial opinions. Yeah.
I would like to speak from the Southeast Asian perspective, because when we think about transgender people, especially transgender women in Southeast Asia, we usually, when children think about them, when the youth thinks about them, we think about them in roles in jobs such as prostitution, because they are often excluded and from just any societal form of labor, and for that reason, I think it makes life and acceptance so much harder for them as well. And it's not really feminism, it's not really a movement for equality or for acceptance if it's excluding such groups. And when it comes to building a community of acceptance, I think it needs to start with education, and it needs to start with remembering, especially for the LGBTQIQ+ community, remembering that transgender people were the first who started the protest for equality. Marsha P. Johnson threw the first brick during the Stonewall protest, and it's incredibly important to remember their role in LGBTIQ+ liberation and acceptance. And when we remember that, when we educate ourselves, I think we can walk towards a more equal and accepting manner. Yeah.
And also, like, in the continuation of education, I think language is very important.
Definitely.
At FemSoc, we really watch the way we speak, and we check ourselves a lot. There's this call-in culture that we have. So if someone says something that's not right, we're going to say it, and it's not like it is a problem inherently. It's not the end of the world. Like, we're here to learn, but watch how you speak. And when you say women, it's most of the time it's not only women. Mm-hmm. So for Reclaim, for a very long time, it's only been I think it was like for women and girl protection, but like women and girls are not the only victims of sexual violence. Mm-hmm. And most of the time it's going to be trans people, non-binary people. Not most of the time, but like a lot of the time, and they're just like invisibilized, if that's a word. Yeah. But yeah, so language and education are just very, very central.
Okay, thank you. So in the media, there has been a lot of conversations, especially surrounding the Qatar World Cup and the protests in Iran, that run on the rhetoric that the Western world must fix the lives of people of colour in other countries in reference to LGBT rights and women's rights. However, Gayatri Spivak, she is an Indian post-structural feminist, said that the white woman are trying to save the brown women from brown men. How do you think the discourses around such topics should be taken up?
I think I'll take this one first. I think it's always very interesting when Western voices are the loudest in conversations like this. Historically, as the resident history student here, the West have always tried to impose their systems on different cultures. And the funniest thing about the patriarchy in especially African countries and cultures is that it was established through colonialism. So I think it's really interesting that the West wants to go back and undo the mistake that they made. But in doing that, they're erasing the voices of the women and the people of color in the countries. So yeah, I just think that they should just stay out of it because they were the ones that did the wrong thing in the first place, and there's no point trying to fix it now. What do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And like you said, the West are trying to, erase the mistake they made, but they can't admit they made that mistake. Yeah. They're not willing to say, like, you know what, we are the ones who, enforced all of that in your own countries. And I can say specifically about India, and I'm sure many other colonies, you said, about LGBT rights and all of that. And I think in the West we associate, the global South with being homophobic and not being as like liberal or, leftist as like we are. But that's not true, because if you go back hundreds of years ago, if you go back before colonialism, I can say at least for India, that we were very accepting. We were extremely accepting of LGBT people. Women, they had more rights than they did after colonialism. And I can say that I think it was in the 1860s, that was when the first homophobic law was introduced into India. And that was because of colonialism. That's when they invaded. And going back to the quote you said about white women trying to save brown women from brown men, that is ridiculous, because the issues that we have with brown men currently are because of white people. It's because of colonialism. And you know what? We don't need white women to save us, to be perfectly honest, because if you want to save us, if you want to raise awareness, you need to raise awareness of our voices, not talk over us. And just briefly, I can't talk much about this, but about what you said with what's happening right now in Qatar and Iranian women's rights and all of that. I know that Women Life Freedom, they've just started up a society, I think it's just recently started up a society here in Manchester, and they did a teach out yesterday, which is wonderful and very, impressive. And I think that, that's a really good way to raise awareness, in our community at least.
Okay, thank you. So certain themes such as female virtue, saving face in the community, and the prevalence of the patriarchy are undeniable in some communities. How do you think these issues play into sexual assault and gender-based violence?
Right. I will speak again from my perspective. Growing up in India, I would always constantly question, why was it that the honor of a family was situated in a woman's vagina? It was constantly that understanding that the honor of a family was preserved and protected by the woman. And I think that is entirely flawed, because in what we see, most cases of rape and sexual assault are perpetrated by men. And what happens in a patriarchy as strong as what exists in Southeast Asia is that there is this culture, this accepted norm of victim blaming because of this flawed idea of honor, purity, the social construct of virginity that is often associated to women and women only and not to men. And this essentially confines them and imprisons them, and what it does, in a way, it marginalizes them and their experiences. So I think the way we can combat this is, again, through education, through the reversal of gender roles, to reminding our men, our boys, how they can respect consent, how they can be sympathetic, empathetic, how they can just be the best version of being a human, and, being educated about what is right and what is wrong in terms of consent and sexual autonomy. I think that's a very important way of combating this issue.
I love going after you because you take everything that I want to say.
Sorry.
I think speaking on behalf of the African community and the Black community, I think those issues are so big, and they just add even more to the shame and victim blaming, but the shame that is associated with these things, and the patriarchy. Cool, blimey, the patriarchy. Always a problem, always an issue. But I think what we can do to kind of help and combat these issues is just creating safe spaces for women to come and talk about these issues and how they're affected by, purity culture and, again, saving face from the community that they're a part of. Where they can just feel like, I can talk about this. It's not my fault. It's really the fault of these systems that have been upholded by men. No, joking. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all of our questions. So does anyone have any closing statements, any closing remarks surrounding Reclaim the Night and the work it does?
I'd just like to say, in the light of our discussion today, really, we just want to say that, we understand that it may have seemed like we maybe talked about our own personal experiences, and that's not what we're not trying to generalize those, because a lot of what we talked about within South Asian and Black communities and even queer communities, it is about what we've experienced, and we want to say that we hope people don't see the answer as white feminism, because that is that's what we're trying not to do. We're trying to disprove that. And we want to say that the best way to maybe resolve these issues, it's not something that we fixed overnight, but the way to work towards resolving these issues is to build community support within all of these minorities. It's to make sure that if you are part of a minority, you support other minorities, which is something that I think is an issue within people of colour and LGBT individuals.
Yeah, totally agree. Be intersectional, use nuance, think before tweeting mean stuff, and I don't know, just read books and listen to people. I was gonna say be kind, Ellen. I don't want to say that. No.
No, I was gonna say learn from others.
Yeah.
Educate yourself and learn from others.
Be kind. Yeah.
It doesn't
have to be ruined by Ellen.
Yeah.
Ellen didn't trademark that.
Yeah. But just in closing remarks, Reclaim the Night is just I feel like it's really important to all of us, and we've been working on that for a while now, and we're really excited about the march. So if it's posted, is it going to be posted before the march? Come to the march.
Basically, yeah.
30th of November at 6 from Owens Park to here in the SU. It's going to be amazing. Amazing might not be the word, but really
powerful.
Important, powerful, yeah. And also donate if you can on the SU website. All the money is going to go to charities such as
Manchester Rape Crisis in Gallup.
Yeah. Bring your friends.
Bring everybody.
Bring everyone.